Hey guys, it's Omer from MMOs.com with a quick weekly news recap of all major MMO news and announced at the week ending August 3rd, 2020. This is episode number 256 of the recap, and the first of news this week comes from Sega regarding Phantasy Star Online 2. Yep, another week, another PSO2 update. This time Phantasy Star Online 2 is launching its episode 4 update and also coming on Steam on August 5th. The Steam launch is a big deal because we'll be getting a glimpse of the game's player-based numbers and a lot of players having trouble with the game's launch on the Microsoft Store. The actual episode 4 update itself is a big one as well, which will increase the game's level cap to 80 and introduce a bunch of new stages, gear, and more. Access to the game itself is also increasing as 33 more countries can now access this global English version of the game. Episode 5 and 6 are scheduled to launch later this year as well, so while the English version of the game is still behind the Japanese one, it should be fully caught up by the end of the year. If you're looking for something to play, PSO2 is well worth checking out. I got a few dozen hours in it myself, and I'm enjoying it so far. Next up, a bit of news from Tera. A Tera spin-off called Tera Battle Arena is set to launch later this year, and yes, you heard that correctly, the folks behind Tera are getting into the MOBA craze. But before you think League of Legends is a bit more like Battle Right than anything else, as it looks like a small arena-based PvP game than a full-blown MOBA. The Tera Battle Arena will be a separate mode inside Tera, so you still have to download the Tera client, but it'll be running kind of as a separate game within Tera more than anything else, because you won't be exactly playing your character. Still, I love the idea of having these games within MMORPGs. You utilize the same combat and some of the same mechanics in those games. It's good to see MMORPGs kind of experimenting with ideas, and I definitely want to see more things like this. Up next, Tree of Savior got a major update this last week, which introduced a brand new max level raid and powerful new class weapons. The new unique raid dungeon is called White Witch's Forest and is available for players level 440 and higher. A legend tier version of the new raid is still in the works, but will be launching very soon. The update includes 8 new level 430 Vivora weapons, which can be looted in the new episode 12 region, but with very low drop rates. There's also a big update planned in the future, which will revamp the game's world map and update the UI as well. So while we don't talk too much about Tree of Savior, the game is still very much alive and getting updated. In fact, the game averages a bit over 2,500 or so players online at any given time, which is a big upgrade over the last few years. In fact, the Steam current player base numbers are the highest they've been since August 2017, so Tree of Savior is doing quite well lately. Next up, a small update for ArcheAge. The game's Guard of the Gods expansion is already live, but the Ipnish Sanctuary update goes live on August 13th, and with it comes a new dungeon called Ipnish Sanctuary, which is located on Aegis Island and is only accessible upon completing the game's main storyline. Further balance changes are in the works with skill sets such as Vitalism and Swiftblade, and others set to receive some big changes in the near future as well. And up next, while we still have no firm release date for Shadowlands, we do know it's launching sometime in the fall, so it's set to launch either this month or next month in September. My bet is though it launches sometime in September. And given that WoW remains the most popular MMORPG in the West, there's definitely some hype behind this one. We got some new tidbits of information this last week about Shadowlands as well, with PvP World Quest making a return in this expansion. And in the game's latest beta build, players can also change covenants at will, but changing covenants does require players to go through a series of quests. Now, covenants are a big part of Shadowlands and offers different faction and class skills. This is actually some kind of penalty for switching covenants as well, but it's not going to be too harsh. They basically don't want you to be able to switch between covenants every week for different raids, so they want to make it a little bit of an inconvenience to switch between them. And next, I have a bit of a silly story here. Dragon's Prophet, remember that MMORPG? Well, it shut down some time ago, but a new version of the game appeared on Steam this last week and set to launch on August 10th by a company called Bobby Game. Now, folks on Reddit have already called this game out for being an unlicensed private server, and based on what I've read so far, it probably is. Pretty funny how private servers can make their way onto Steam, but hey, if the game lives on through a private server, that's still a win in my book. Sometimes these companies that run these games can't make any money and shut them down because they have a large staff and much overhead. A private server, on the other hand, typically has minimal expenses and usually run by 1 or 2 guys, so they can end up running the game much more profitably. It's the reason why we see so many private servers out there for all these old games. But yeah, it's probably a private server, and it's still a good thing in my book. Up next, Phoenix Labs launched the Clear Skies update for Dauntless, which introduced the new revamped hub city of Ramsgate, reworked the sword kit, and made changes to Umbral Escalation, and also added the new Hunt Pass. Dauntless, which is heavily inspired by Monsters of the World, remains one of the more popular Western-developed free-to-play games out there, with over 15 million total players as of late 2019. Keep in mind, though, that's not any kind of active player-based number, just a total number of registered players. Still, 15 million isn't bad. The game is available on consoles and on PC through the Epic Games Store. Next up, a small reminder that the previously announced Jormag Rising update for Guild Wars 2 launched this last week, and with it comes new content in the Drizzlewood Coast, which expands to more areas and introduces a new meta event. The update also adds new rewards, new United Legion's Waystation Mastery upgrades, and more importantly, a continuation of the game's ongoing story. And Guild Wars 2 is also one of the few Western-developed MMORPGs out there. Really not too many of these Western-developed MMOs still around, mostly Korean and Chinese. Up next, Final Fantasy XI is set to get a new update later this month. Yes, Final Fantasy XI is still getting updated, and this new update will feature a brand new storyline, which will play out over the course of many future updates. However, players will need to complete the Rhapsodies of Vana'diel to experience the new content, though. Job adjustments are also in the works, with Beastmaster changes coming in this month's update. Final Fantasy XI hasn't had many huge updates over the last few years, but it's good to see some actual gameplay-related stuff being added to the game after all these years. And this one is an oldie. It's been running continuously since 2002, making it one of the older, continuously running MMORPGs out there. And yes, it is still subscription-based. The next and last bit of news is a small one from ArcheAge regarding Neverwinter. They released their short-term development roadmap for the game, which includes changing the Blood War from platform-wide encounter to an instance-based encounter similar to heroic encounters. The devs are also working to fix a few bugs. They'll be changing the drop rates for treasure maps and a few other small changes, and these are all set to go live pretty soon. The game's Averages update also launched on console this last week. I do like when developers lay down a content roadmap for their game, though this is a really short one. I did like when PSO2 kind of explained that by the end of the year we'll get all 6 episodes, and I like to see other MMORPGs kind of always releasing these content roadmaps so players know what to expect in the coming months. Anyway guys, that's it for MMO News this week. I'll see you guys next time. Later guys.